Hey everyone, welcome to the Luminous podcast. This week I did my first remote episode of the show, which actually went really smoothly. I sat down across the country with Tyler Kicera, Senior Director of the Kinetics Department at Tait Towers. They're responsible for some of the most incredible kinetic stage designs and permanent installations in the world, including the London 2012 Olympics, U2, Queen, and Rodger Waters World Tours, all of Deadmouse's rediculous stages, the Wynn in Las Vegas, so many more absolutely bonkers installations. Tyler and I were supposed to present this year at LDI on a panel discussion on architainment and feature design, but it kind of fell apart at the last minute. Oh well. We decided he should definitely do an episode of the podcast so we could get to know each other and at least talk for a little bit. We had a fascinating conversation, and we got into some great side topics about some of his other passions: road racing and Spec Miata competitions, maintaining work-life balance, how having kids can change your perspective and your priorities. He's a genuinely cool guy, and I'm bummed that we didn't get to do our panel this year, but it was great to get to hang out and get to know each other. Hope you enjoy the conversation. Let me introduce you real quick, just for people who don't know who you are. You're Tyler Kicera, and you work for Tait Towers, doing their kinetics division, right? You're the head of the kinetics division, or the director?
Yeah. So, I'm the head of Kinetics, which serves as our in-house creative team. We do a lot of design work. If you think of the design process as, you know, the concept design is kind of like -30 to 0, and then once there's design intent, that's sort of like 0% to 100 is like where you would release parts to the shop to get manufactured. So we work quite a bit in that -30 to 0 space.
That's actually my favorite part, and that's what takes the most time in my experience. It's like you might spend a year and a half talking about a project before
Yeah,
anything gets fabricated.
yeah, and it's probably the most like underappreciated part of the process because it's always easy. I shouldn't say it's easy, but it's easier when you have context or things to look at and then criticize or critique or build off of. But a lot of what I'm doing and what my team is doing is really like starting with a blank piece of paper, blue sky, like what's possible. So we're right there in the beginning, trying to create the vision, which I think is a lot harder than people who maybe don't do it every day realize.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. That's definitely like the first and main step in any project, right? I mean, you guys have done some crazy stuff, though. It's like the kinetic installations that you've done in Vegas and all over the place. Really, yeah, it's I knew about White Void actually before I knew about Tait, and then I met Gemma. I met Gemma at an LDI, and then I looked into the work that you guys were done, and it was just like, damn, I want to be like these guys when I grow up. It's fucking
Yeah,
crazy.
the it's funny how that whole we call her nano winch. It's funny how that whole thing took off. I think we did the Shanghai Expo, World Expo in Shanghai in 2010, and this was back when I think FTSI or Fisher Technical had done that prior to us acquiring that company. And it's funny because the phone would just continue to ring off the hook for people saying, "I want to do Shanghai Spheres,"
Right.
and so yeah, I mean, eventually we got to a point where it was like, okay, we need to go design a product to be able to do this more of this kind of work, but we wanted to kind of go beyond what had been done already and do something more interesting. And so we started putting, developing a device that could lift and lower, a lit object and do a little bit more in that respect, which, ultimately led to what we did on Red Hot Chili Peppers and more recently on some other shows.
So
So
I don't actually know the Shanghai Spheres. Were they illuminated, or was it just
they
like
weren't.
sculptural?
Yeah, they weren't. It was just I think like a 4-inch white sphere. Um, And so it was just this like dance, and there was some dancers that interacted with it, some projection and lighting. And it was, again, sort of, people were barricaded around it, so you couldn't walk under it or be immersed in it. But, then sort of the next iteration of it was, okay, let's figure out how we can kind of take this to the next level. So yeah.
So were you with the company at that time? Were you part of that project?
Shanghai Spheres, I was not. It was prior to Tait acquiring Fisher Technical, I believe. And so that kind of I think actually all happened right around the same time as the acquisition, which I was at Tait. Throughout that period, I didn't have a direct connection to that project, but the work that I was doing at the time, Tait as a whole was really focused on concert touring.
Because that's the main bread and butter of Tait, isn't it? It's like live events.
Yeah, I mean, it grew out of the touring industry. So the namesake Michael Tait founded the company in 1978. He was regarded as the fifth member of the band Yes, and designed their lighting, drove their van, and all that stuff. And
that's hilarious. I had no idea that's
eventually built a business off of it, and so yeah, until really probably about that point in time when Shanghai Spheres happened in 2010, that was the bread and butter, was all the concert touring, live event, moving shows from city to city every night, and kind of doing the odd one-off, TV award show or something like that.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, I mean, it's morphed from that really into, I would consider us a technology company, and, work in all these different spaces now, permanent installations and theaters and spectaculars, kinetic architecture. It's
what
really,
percentage of your work do you think is focused on kinetics? Like how many of the projects that Tait does is directly involve kinetics?
At the moment, it's probably a smaller percentage. And part of that is just that I think we're in a position where we're just figuring out how to leverage kinetics and what we're doing in the creative space. And, we're not here to own the creative space so much as we have that capability in terms of delivering creative vision. But we also work with other creatives and we collaborate, and, it's like kind of whatever's going to, move the ball the furthest down the road as far as a project or the creative. So, we're sort of in the midst of really trying to figure out how to grow that skill set, and how to do more of that work to continue to help, facilitate the core business at Tait, which is to be an end-to-end solution provider.
So it's just basic. It's stage design. It's stage design and installation design.
Yeah, it's not even so much stage design. Really, the space that we're working is more in the permanent installs. The architectural installations, cruise ships, theaters, opera houses, more that space than the concert touring. There's really, there's a ton of very well established designers in that space, and we work really closely with them on projects.
Who are some of the stage designers that you've worked with that you've really enjoyed working with?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many of them. Personally, I've worked pretty closely with the guys at Stu Fish, Rick Lipson, Mark Fisher before he passed away. Worked with Leroy Bennett and Billy Williams.
Yeah.
There's just, there's so many out there, that do great work.
You guys ever work with Steven Lieberman?
we've worked with Steve before.
He's more of a lighting designer, but he's a friend of
Yep.
mine, and he's
Yeah.
very cool guy. He has amazing lighting designs.
Yeah, I want to say he used to do some work for the Wynn or something, I think, which I
Yeah,
think we might have crossed
yeah.
paths there on that. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people out, in the entertainment space who are just doing, really amazing things, and we really look at ourselves as just, being there to support them in that.
So it's a lot of production. I mean, we've been struggling to really find that niche or fall into the groove of like production versus design, because we keep going back and forth between both. It's we'll do like mostly design on one project, and then we'll hop over to doing almost exclusively production and working with a designer for another project. And it's this there's a bunch of companies that kind of I see them like straddling that line. And we're a very young company, and it's interesting to see how more established companies have like made that model work.
Well, we don't do design for hire. The our business is built on, as I said, being an end-to-end solution provider. So for us, it's all about, delivering on a vision, whether that vision is one that we come up with or, we work with somebody on or they provide to us. That's really what our business is built on. And so, we're really happy to kind of work in any capacity from a creative standpoint.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But it's very hands-on. It's physical, and it's like manifesting a vision. I get that. That's yeah, that's a similar mission statement to what we have, but we're definitely focused almost entirely on the permanent install. I came from concert touring, and I just don't. Yeah, I find permanent installations so much more satisfying. Like, take your time. You can really think about a problem and come up with a properly engineered solution for it, and you don't have to rush.
Yeah, the biggest thing for me that I see, like the difference, right, is that everybody in the concert touring industry, it's a fairly small community of people. We
Of
all know
jaded
each other.
people, let's be real.
Well, maybe, but we all. I say we all, but like everybody that's involved, right? Typically, the teams have worked together in the past. There's history. There's trust.
Yeah,
And
it's a small community, man. Everybody knows everybody.
right. And there's I look at it like it's a handshake deal in a sense. We have contracts and all of that stuff, but like we're all committed to working together to get to opening night. That's the goal, right? And
Yeah,
whatever we have to do to jump in and help each other to get there, it happens, and that's the end game. For a construction project, it's like the complete opposite. All the companies, all the subcontractors, they try to silo and build these walls around each other from a liability standpoint and a scoping standpoint, because they don't make money the same way on projects. A lot of contractors make their money on change orders. They don't make it
yeah.
on the actual contract. Well, that's not how, as a company, we're used to working or really set up to work. So
That's
it's
a part of the
taken
process I don't really like, but
it's
we come
and
in at the
it's
end,
it's it's
so
slow. It's
we can like
slow.
miss all that.
Yeah, we are lucky because a lot of what we do in that space, we're integrated right into the GC and the construction process, and it becomes something you really have to manage closely to not get burned on. Um,
Yeah,
because
it's funny because I've like felt that. I've like we've started to we've been in projects where that has started to become an issue, but we're still more, like removed enough from that system that we haven't become entangled by it.
it's just like it's very very different from a concert touring type project.
Yeah, yeah,
So we're continuing. We do a lot of that work, and we're continuing to find our way. But for me personally, that was a huge learning curve, because I was so used to, for you know 8-9 years of like, hey, we're all marching toward this goal, and we're all just going to do whatever it takes. And then you get into a project that is construction based, and it's like, that seems like how it's going. And then all of a sudden, out of the blue, it's like, you're getting slapped with, having to pay for other people's delays and stuff that like just doesn't happen, in concert touring.
Interesting. Can you give me an example? Not like specifics with names or whatever, but like, can you focus in more on and like a situation where that's happened? Because I'm very fascinated by, as we progress more and more into the like placemaking, feature design scene. Yeah, I mean, what's a common scenario where that'll come and catch you in the ass, and
Yeah, I mean, there's anything from, a company's shop drawings not resembling the as built piece, and you've gone and designed something around the shop drawings, and you show up on site and the thing doesn't work because the as built is different, and then it becomes a blame game over, I sent you the as built drawings, why didn't you look at those? And it's like, well, I was building this at the same time you were building your thing. How am I supposed to be able to close those loops? So it's just, a lot of it is, like I said, people are siloed, and they like to try to, just control their own space. And the second that anybody violates it, they throw their hands up and it's a change order. And
it's a turf war.
Yeah, absolutely. A turf war. Yeah. 100%.
Yeah. It's funny, man. I think it really comes down to communication, and we've never worked we've been very fortunate to work with companies and individuals who we're on first name basis with. We did a project with Moment Factory where they did the design, and then they came to us to build the physical structure. And the structure that they designed wasn't, well, there were elements that were not physically possible, and there were elements that were not physically possible to do within the budget constraints, right? But it's like, we had real tight communication with the design team, and we were all friends. So it kind of worked out. It worked out pretty well, in that we got to the finish line in a very like collaborative way. The client got more or less exactly what they had signed up for. We gave Moment Factory a beautiful piece that they could in turn program, and we could all walk away being like, yeah, we built this thing, but it was definitely, in that case, we couldn't touch the actual installation. We were working in a union venue. So it was like, we build these pieces, we show up on site, we point, and then a bunch of union guys do the install. But it wasn't a problem because we could like keep a very close eye on how that process was going forward.
Yeah, I mean, not everyone is a nightmare. You just have to manage it appropriately,
Yeah, it comes down to communication. Yeah, I mean, it's very much a communication thing.
Yep. Yeah, and being crystal clear about what's you're doing, what they're doing, and if you have questions, it's an RFI. It's not an email. It's it's a whole different thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, man. Sounds like politics to me.
Yeah, it's for sure.
So, man, we were talking about this a little bit before we started the podcast, but I was just looking at, I Googled your name before we started this, and found out that you have a long history in motorsports. Is that like, it says on your website that you've been driving since you were 6?
Yep.
That's ridiculous.
It's funny. I think a lot of people do that. They as anybody does these days, when you meet somebody, you Google them and you try to figure out who they are and all of that. And it's funny
only if I'm stalking them or I'm about to do an interview.
Yeah, that's funny though, because I've actually gotten that before, where like I'll go to a meeting or something and I'll be meeting somebody for the first time and they will have been like prepped with who I am.
You're like,
I
oh yeah,
show
you're
up
that
and
race car driver.
they're like, do you race cars? And I'm like, yeah, that's me. I know that when you Google my name, that's all you find. But I really do this other stuff, um,
I didn't think
every
it was
day.
you. I thought there was like another Tyler.
Yeah.
And then I was just
Unfor-
like Tyler Kicera Tait, and it was like, nah, it's the same guy.
Yeah. I'm the only Tyler Kicera in the whole country. So it's pretty much
Are you
guaranteed to
really?
be me. Yeah. There's only like,
Because I'm not the only Rob Pope with 2 B's,
okay.
which is surprising.
Yeah.
But I've
there's
found other Rob Popes.
only a handful of people in this country with my last name, and we're all related. And to my knowledge, there's not another one of them named Tyler. So that makes me the only one.
Wow, man. Well,
It,
there
it's
you go.
it's pretty nice when it comes to like domain names and Gmail addresses and things, because I don't have to fight with anybody, like Tyler Kicera 41 or anything like that. It just
Tyler.Kicera at Gmail.
yeah, exactly.
Right.
So, but yeah, no, the racing thing has been. My dad got me into that when I was 6. Started racing go karts and quarter midgets, and
What's a quarter midget?
yeah, it's like a sprint car you might see on like a dirt track at like an oval.
Yeah.
Big wing on top, and they slide the cars around.
Okay, yeah, I know those
Um,
things.
yeah, so it's just like a much smaller version. I used to race on asphalt, um, and yeah, so I did that. Really, I started when I was young, and it's just been something I've done all my life. It's been an awesome, way for me and my dad and my grandfather and others in the family to bond and maintain close relationships. And for me these days, it's like it's my getaway from work. It's my sort of escape. And if you've read it all into the flow state, that for me is the thing I get out of it. A lot of people
Yeah,
say,
man.
oh, it must be like a huge adrenaline rush. And I
No,
always say
it's
it's
like
the
this
opposite.
ultimate focus, right?
It's the opposite. It's like a Zen experience. You want to be like virtually asleep when you're doing it, because you want to be just completely in tune with all the information that you're receiving. And so you're forced to tune out everything. And so for me, like those weekends when I'm away, doing that, um, regardless of how well I do, um, I typically come back refreshed, and it's a good way to recharge.
So this year has been a real year for me to like find those uh to find personal balance, right? I think that's super important, is to find that escape and find that activity that gives you access to that quiet place in your brain, right? Because that's where inspiration comes from. For me, it's climbing. I'm very much into climbing. I'm very much into to like outdoor adventure sports. But yeah, I've definitely I was into rally car racing for a while, so I
Okay.
understand what you mean about like the Zen space of complete focus. You ever heard of Dirtfish? Yeah, I did the Dirtfish school up in Seattle, and
That's
yeah,
awesome.
I was into it, man. I was definitely into it. I've never done any track racing. I've never done like asphalt racing, but it is anytime you're driving a car, this massive mechanical object at high speeds and it's a game of balancing traction, right? It's like you're managing traction versus
Yep.
inertia.
Well, and it's like it's a real full sensory experience. I mean, you're using your sense of hearing and sight, and in some cases smell, as well as like you know you have to have a really sensitive ass, in a way. You got to be able to feel what the car is doing. Like you said, it's a battle for grip, and you need to know when the car is on that edge of having it and not. And
Well, that's where
um,
the magic is, right? It's like you push it to the limit
absolutely.
until your traction starts to give. And it's like knowing your car,
Mhm.
knowing how it handles, and knowing the surface that you're racing on.
Yeah.
I think that's why I like rallying so much, is because that surface is variable. You know what I mean? And it's like, you can, it's almost like it's almost more of a game of braking. Right. Your brake is like the most important element in.
Honestly, I think it's true even on an asphalt Grand Prix circuit.
Well, that's how you steer, right?
The people who are good on the brakes typically they're really quick, and there's an advantage there to having that little edge, that pedal feel. Like it's something I feel like I'm good at that allows me to excel is on that. But more so even just like the kind of tie over of my profession and what I've been doing in mechanical design. I'm a trained architect, but like I've really done mechanical engineering for 12 years is what I feel like.
Did you go to school for that?
I went to school I'm a trained architect. So I went to school for architecture. I have a degree from Pratt Institute in Brooklyn, New York. And, but I grew up building things, working on cars. I've always had a kind of mechanical aptitude. And, when I started at Tait as a mechanical designer, it was like this perfect marriage of the creative process that I had learned in architecture school and my sort of just background and natural mechanical aptitude to design, stage lifts and big, moving pieces, rigged pieces overhead and stuff like that. So, but, I'm able to kind of channel that as well, even into the racing stuff, because you don't just show up and drive the car. Like you try to tune the car and make the car better mechanically, like handling wise and stuff. So it's pretty, I enjoy that part of it too.
Do you work on your own cars?
Yep. Yeah. And
it's a pretty essential skill. If you're going to drive a car, you got to know how to take it apart. You got to know how it works.
And you got to know too that like, well, when the car is doing this, that means I need to do these things to the car to get it to do that. And so,
don't you think that's a good analog for like any complex system that you design? It's the reason that it's so hard to hand off an incredibly complex system to an operator who did not design it. And we run into that a lot, where it's like, okay, you get paid to design these ridiculous things and then you hand them off and it's, there's a million things that can go wrong and do go wrong. And they're generally pretty minor unless you have no idea.
Well, it's that tribal knowledge thing, right? It's like you hand it over and you give them what you think are all the details, but inherently you forgot things because to you it's just second nature, but to them they've never seen it before. So,
well, it's like nested knowledge, right? It's like there's you've got like knowledge pockets at the top, but then in each pocket you've got sub pockets and sub pockets and sub pockets, and it just branches out into this like root structure until you're all the way at the end, right? Until you're at the actual like the analog power electronic, electrical details of the elements that you're using or the mechanical elements that you're using. You know what I mean? And you can only put so many of those root branches into a manual. And it's like, well, these problems, where do they begin and where do they end? How far down the root structure do they go?
Yep.
Do you do like systems design, or are you pretty much mostly on the creative?
Mostly on the creative, but involved in solutions as well. So, I think a big part of it for us, because we're not designed for hire. We don't operate like a typical architect or the other just straight designer who's going to come up with concepts or ideas, and it's somebody else's problem to go figure out how to go make real, bring that to life.
Yeah.
So we approach the creative from our end, always thinking about the solution. And so we tend to, I wouldn't say that we're bounded by the things we know we can make, because I think that's not being true to the creative process, but we're always in the back of our minds thinking about how we would achieve something, as we pitch it or while we're pitching it.
Yeah, of course.
So
Of
a lot of the
course.
creative conversations we have might be, well, what if we did this? And then usually the second question is, and how would we do that?
That's
And
funny, man. That's
um,
the exact um, flow of how we speak to our clients, and that's like our main value add. It's like, okay, well, you come with like a vision or like a concept for an effect, and then we will take that and figure it out. So I guess we're more production, but in the end, it's really a marriage of like, okay, you take this seed concept and then you pair that with reality. Like, how
yeah,
are you going to physically manifest
right.
this
Yep.
concept?
Yep. Yeah. It's a, I think it's rewarding to be able to deliver on a vision and not just be the people coming up with the ideas. Because I think, while, like I said before, I think people probably underappreciate that -30 to 0. The whole process of like bringing an idea to life is like giving birth. Not that I know what that's like, but I mean, you
Well, you have
really,
a kid though, right? I mean, you
well,
kind of know what that's like.
I kind of know what it's like. I don't know what it feels like, but yeah, I mean, you're really, you're shepherding projects along, you're campaigning along the way. Um, it's sometimes a labor of of love. It's a love-hate relationship in some cases, and
Sure.
but when the thing finally is in front of you and it's working and it's we're you're in an arena full of 18,000 people, and the thing that you came up with goes off or works or whatever, and that crowd like reacts to it. I mean, it's just like you can't replace that, and you can't put it into words even to almost how it
It's the
makes you
ultimate
feel.
drug,
So
man. I think that's why we're all in this industry, you know?
yeah,
It's
definitely keeps you coming back for sure.
absolutely, man. So tell
And it,
what's the craziest project, or what's the most memorable project in recent history that you've done? Like, what's your favorite project
my
that you worked
favorite,
on with?
yeah, my favorite project is probably Rodger Waters' The Wall. Um,
Wow, I didn't know you
so
guys were part of that.
yeah, um, so that was obviously a Mark Fisher design from the late '70s, and I think they built a set for a couple of shows in 1979 or '80. Um, but it was at the time, it's like the most complicated thing ever built from a live event standpoint, in terms of, they built the wall across the arena. There was machinery that stabilized the wall. There were lifts that allowed the crew to build the wall. And at the time, the technology didn't exist to facilitate that being a tourable show. And so then you fast forward to like 2009, basically, 30 years later, and Rodger's going back out, and he wants to take the wall on tour, and really, like, we stayed very true to Mark's vision from the '70s in that original show. Um, and it was really interesting on that because he had personally like built and controlled a lot of the machinery. He really pushed and challenged us, like, and there was also for us, like, there was no excuse for why we couldn't do something or why something had to change, because he had done it
Well,
already.
describe the mechanics of that show. Describe to people who've never seen it.
Yeah,
What was it?
so there's literally a wall, um, a literal wall that's built across the arena. When the audience walks in, the main part of the wall on the stage is not there, but it's sort of like a semi-constructed wall then that goes out into the seats. And the band plays, and as they play the show, um, there's there are a series of lifts on the downstage side of the wall that lift the drum kit and keyboards and things up and down. Um, Within the wall, there's a series of what we call stabilizers, and so those are telescopic lifts that go up inside the wall. So as the show goes on, the crew effectively place bricks in a specific order. The guys at front of house click a space bar, and that brick that's just been placed, the mask on the projection is revealed or removed, and so the projection is revealed on that brick. And you do that brick by brick. There's lifts just upstage of the wall, which are used to shuttle bricks on and off stage and to lift the crew up and down, as they build the wall from stage level all the way up to, what was, I think, 25 feet above the stage deck. And then the band plays downstage of the wall. And then towards the end of the show, the wall stabilizers, which were at one point holding the wall up, because in an arena there's wind caused by air conditioning and things. So a wall of that size out of really cardboard foldable bricks has no stability. So
is that what it was made out of? Cardboard?
Yeah, it's a flame retardant cardboard. And so the bricks were disposable in that, once one got damaged, they just threw them out. And but they all broke down and flat packed. And so at the end of the show, the stabilizers that were holding the wall up had these devices in the end of them that at the end of the show would plummet at a high rate of speed, and we had these knockers that would go upstage and downstage, basically just shatter the wall, and the wall would crumble down, around the stage or on the stage. And so some of those bricks would get damaged and they'd have to get thrown out and be replaced with new ones and things. So it was a lot of equipment. But, fast forward 30 years and the concert touring industry, Tait's capabilities, everything was at a point where we actually could take that on the road, and it was a show that could be loaded in every single night, and they could do back-to-back shows. So
right.
For me, so I was the lead designer at Tait on that show, as well as the project manager. So I had a really close relationship with, Mark Fisher on that one, and Jeremy Lloyd, who was working for Stewfish at the time.
Did you tour with it, or did you just do the design and see it out the door?
Did the design. I didn't go on the road with it, but I spent, a week and a half in Wilkes-Barre where we rehearsed the show and technically rehearsed it. And I went to probably a dozen shows and met with Rodger a bunch of times. And
I was just going to ask that. You get to hang out with Rodger?
Yeah, one of the coolest, probably, one of the coolest stories was opening night in Toronto. We're with the crew who are part of the show, actually, the guys, the stagehands, and those guys that build the set are actually the ones building the wall during the show. They're kind of cast members, or they were.
That's cool.
And so we're sitting in catering. This is opening night, mind you. They haven't done a show yet. And I'm sitting with the head carp, Denny Rich, and we're sitting there, and there's a couple other guys around the table with us. And the next thing I know, I look over to my right, and Rodger sits down in the chair next to me, and he just is like, "How's it going, guys? You ready for tonight?" And everyone was just like, "Yeah, let's do it." And he proceeded to just tell crazy stories from when he was on tour. It was just a really surreal experience. I'm not starstruck, but just the situation I was in, the context of it being opening night, the wall, this legend is next to, sitting next to me telling these stories. It was just it didn't feel real. It was incredible. So
I hear that, man. It's funny. It's I have a theory about fame, right? And I think that fame is almost it's like meth or something. Whereas when you first start, if somebody becomes famous instantly, then it just completely fucks their personality. And you see this, when I was touring, I got to hang out with a number of like recently famous people. And it always blew my mind how not approachable most rock stars are, right? The coolest person I ever got to tour with, most approachable, was Justin Timberlake, right? It's like not really into his music, but as a person, he was cool as fuck. He was like, you could talk to him like this. We could have a conversation, right? And I remember the first tour I ever went on was Fergie and the Black Eyed Peas, right? And it was like that tour where she had just like split off from the Black Eyed Peas and gotten like the sponsorship from Verizon, right? And it was like, yeah, I mean, you just couldn't talk to her. It was like a completely like I felt bad for her. I was like, man, you must find it very difficult to like make actual friends, like people who are not talking to you for the only reason that you're famous. I'm sure Rodger has been famous for long enough so that he knows how to handle himself on that drug, which is fame.
Right. I mean, I just thought it was amazing that, even on any other given night, that he would like stumble into catering and have dinner with, and just sit down at a random table with people, let
Well,
alone,
usually the catering is shared, right? I mean, it's like it was always shared when we were touring. Like the catering was like the best part of the tour because it was the same for the crew as it was for the musicians, that it was for the managers, and everybody just ate. The crew, the caterers were part of the crew.
yeah.
Like you
But
had
I
like
mean, just that, like, it's opening night. Like, I would have assumed he would be like in his dressing room, wanting to just chill out. And
yeah,
instead, he was just like wanted to go hang out with people, and
that's awesome.
wasn't with anybody, but he just was by himself. He just sat down and just started having a conversation. It was
Oh, it's probably a relief. He's probably like, "Fuck, get me away from all these people." Jesus Christ, I had to go kick it with like normal people.
yeah. And I was surprised too. Like, I because I went. There were things that we changed on the show and um, added and whatnot, and there was a couple times where I would go out to the Izod Center in Jersey or something to meet with Chris Kanzi and other people, and like there was an instance or two where Rodger wanted to like chat about an idea he had or something, and I like walk up on stage and I had to, of course, introduce myself before, but I go up on stage and he's like, "Hey Tyler, how's it going?" Like totally was like one of those people who just, I don't know if he is one of those people that can just remember names or what, but like it was a really personal thing that he knew or remembered who I was, and yeah, I think
That's awesome.
it's
I
it's
wish I
pretty
was one of those
crazy.
people. I can't
Yeah,
remember names worth a damn.
yeah.
It's terrible.
I'm sure he's forgotten by now, but
Well,
um,
I'm sure he remembers who you are.
yeah, potentially. I don't know. I mean, um, it ended up being like one of the most successful tours, and I think within the industry anyway is regarded as maybe the best of all time.
What years were those?
It toured in arenas from 2010 to 12, I want to say, and then they transformed the hell out of it and went into baseball stadiums.
I think I
Um,
saw that at a. I'm trying to remember what festival I was at, but
yeah,
I'm
it
pretty
was
sure I saw that.
insane.
Yeah,
The scale.
I saw that festival, or I saw that show. I just can't remember where.
It was hilarious. So we were in Philly, uh, and so they had set the wall up. I hadn't talked to those guys in quite a while, but Kanzi, the production manager, knew I was coming, and a bunch of the other crew. And anyway, so I had like a tour pass from the arena run and all that, and it was hilarious. Like I just walked through like 3 layers of security, and I'm like ready to walk down the ramp down to get my passes for my family and stuff who were coming, and I got stopped by the head of security for from the tour, And he like full on had me by the arm and was like, "Who are you? Like, where did you get this pass?" Um, and he wouldn't let go of me until, and it was hilarious because like all these crew guys like saw me and started coming up to me and like saying, "Hey man, how's it going? I haven't seen you in a while." And this guy's like still got my arm. I'm like,
It was the
dude, like
bulldog.
clearly these guys know me. There's like 25 set cards that have my company's name on them. Like, just chill out, man. And
Probably new. It was probably new.
I don't know. I just thought it was a funny
Got to prove
situation.
myself to Rodger.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I guess that was my fault for showing up with a tour pass that was out of date. But I guess there had like been people. It was all because there had been people in other cities who had counterfeit tour passes, like all access passes, and
Oh wow.
yeah, had been caught like
Yeah,
backstage.
but
And
yours
stuff.
said
So,
Tait on it, right? I'm sure you had
well,
your company and
it had my name. It didn't have Tait necessarily. Like it was a legit wall tour pass, but yeah, it was funny. Like I got it. Like but I got through 3 layers of security. You know, like of event security, and they didn't stop me, and yet the head of security for the tour did. So
did you
anyway, that
save it?
was
You
just
save
like
you
funny.
save your badges?
Oh yeah, yeah. I have them all up in my office in my house here. So.
Nice, man. Yeah, me too. I keep mine tucked away, but I definitely one of the funnest tours I ever went on was Tool, and that was
Oh, that's awesome.
back in like 11, I think. But yeah, I definitely keep that badge. If for no other reason than I can be like, yes, I did tour with Tool. Here is my badge.
Yeah, I don't have too many of them because I really wasn't in a position like that where I was that heavily involved throughout the entire process, and then there from opening night or rehearsal standpoint where I really needed a tour pass. So I don't really have many from other shows, but um, because at that point in time, then I took over the engineering department at Tait and ran that for like 5 years. Um, so I really was like more concerned really after that project with, pushing work through the shop and was less involved in like seeing it through to the end.
Sure. Yeah. So that's like mechanical engineering then, right? You were doing like yeah.
Yeah. So there were like probably 30 designers and engineers that worked for me at that point, and, just tried to provide guidance for them. And um, at that point was responsible really for everything design related that went through Tait. And when I say design, that's more the mechanical design and engineering. We didn't really do any creative other than just collaborating with the show designers and lighting designers and things. But
Sure. All stage related or mostly stage related?
it was all concert touring at that point.
Yeah. And that's the bread and butter. Bread and butter is stage like fabrication.
Yeah, I would
Production.
say that's what the company was built on.
Yeah.
I mean, today
Everybody's got to have their core business, man. It's
yeah.
yeah.
Today it's probably only half of what we do, but it's still in that industry is still we're still Tait and we're still doing the same thing and
Yeah, well, it's
pushing
supported your
boundaries.
growth, right? I mean, that's what helps grow the company from, you know, just the founder to what it is now. It's very inspiring. So what's the next thing? What are you guys working on now that you're stoked about? If you could talk about it.
Yeah, that's a tough one. Under NDA for pretty much everything.
Yeah, no.
But no, we're doing, like I said, we're doing creative work in the cruise ship industry. We're doing some creative work, in the architecture world, and from a kinetic standpoint, what I'm heading up at the moment. It's really like my drive or my goal in the near term is to grow the team and grow our capabilities and capacity to do more of that because really as I said, kind of operating outside of the concert touring space, more so in the permanent world. where I
Yeah,
think,
man,
you know,
that's
there's
where it's at. I think there's like a convergence going on right now. It's like there's a merger happening between marketing, show production, and architecture, right? Where it's like you've got these the tools of concert touring being used in architectural installations for marketing purposes, like to brand a building, you know?
absolutely.
It's
Yeah,
exciting.
or like drive action, or, you know, people to a place. For me, the whole idea behind applying our skill set in the kind of entertainment based automation, you know, the technology, the robotics, and integration of media and all of that is really that, like, the, there's great value in being able to drive people to a place. So if you think about to a sports arena, or a mall, or something where otherwise, you know, people won't go, or won't be encouraged to go, much like a concert, that you know, people don't watch concerts on DVD. Like, they do DVD shoots. It's
Yeah,
totally not
yeah,
the
but
same
who buys
experience.
those things really?
Right. But going to a show, being part of a live experience, seeing it, feeling it, like that, there's something there that you just can't replace. And so it's how do we do that in the built environment, to get people to come experience something. And so, you know, like we just did uh, the scoreboard at Wells Fargo Center in Philly, where the 76ers and the Flyers play. And the whole premise behind that is enhancing the fan experience, and to enrich that and create something that, you know, can drive the energy in that space, like, uh, through content and motion, and other effects that are more, I would consider, like, show related than traditional, like what you would see on a center hung scoreboard. Um, and and really that can apply across really all of the built environment. You know, the Omnia chandelier that we did in Vegas at Caesar's Palace is the same thing. We can drive the energy in the space just by how that's used, and that thing really was a marketing expense. At the end of the day, it has its own hashtags on social media. Like,
Yeah, they all are,
a,
man. They're
a,
all it always falls under the like the
a, yeah,
marketing budgets.
a huge number of the people that go to that club go there to see that and experience that. And
Sure.
that's, you know,
Just
it's
because it's branding.
sometimes
That
it's
that makes
sometimes
space.
it's sometimes hard to quantify what that ROI is going to be, but it's important to communicate that it's there, because, like, these things aren't cheap and they're not free, right? Like, so there's an investment that you've got to convince somebody to make, and at the moment, that's the hardest part. The rest of it is easy, and or relatively easy. I think as more of this stuff happens, these kinetic scoreboards and these sculptures and interactive, you know, media installations and things like that, I think that job will get easier, because you'll have more data points to reference in terms of quantifying ROI, or at least how to be able to pitch that, you know, to somebody.
Yeah, for it, to me, it feels like it's a the struggle is always like educating the client in a way, you know, and it's in every job a critical part of the process is showing the client how a project like this, how a placemaking feature can provide ROI, right? What do you think about this in terms of recession, right? Like everybody's talking to me right now about like, oh, the recession's coming. And you know, it's in a way it's true that the first things that get cut are some of these, you know, it's like we're the frosting on top of the cake, the sprinkles on top of the frosting. You know what I mean? It's it's important now more than ever, it feels like, to be able to legitimize the value of what we do, just because it could be construed as superfluous or an extra.
Yeah. Um, I mean,
Tait's been around
yeah,
through multiple recessions. How have you
yeah,
guys
and
handled it?
honestly, the the live event side of our business is, I don't want to say recession proof, but like at least through the '08, '09 one, I mean, our business only got stronger. People weren't taking vacations; they were going to shows because like that was what people could afford and felt comfortable spending money on, was like concert tickets. Um, and so that industry didn't suffer at all. I would say, if anything, it got stronger. So, um, I think people are always going to turn to entertainment, and probably more so in times when they can't afford to do other things. So, I think what you're talking
Man, you're
about,
making me want to get back into the live production industry.
yeah, I mean, but in some respects, yeah, I don't know. I guess it might be a tough sell in terms of some of this work that we're doing that you could view as superfluous or an extra or a bonus. But I think if people really understood the value of it, they'd understand that the value of live and the value of experience, and they'd understand that really this shouldn't be looked at as a bonus. It should be looked at as like the foundation.
Well, I think more and more it is actually, and it's just because it's so commonplace now to be almost indispensable. Like if you are building a multi-million dollar property, hundreds of millions of dollars, which is typical, right? And you don't have some kind of placemaking feature, something that differentiates your large building from the next large building, then what are you doing? It's almost it's a necessity, and it's a part of the branding.
So I don't really know. I'm not sure. Well, I guess we'll have to see. Hopefully, we don't get to that point. But
I mean, it goes in cycles. Time will tell. I think that the key is to spread your bases, right? I think that every business, right, if they're smart, they spread their bases, so they've got fingers in a bunch of different industries, a bunch of different pies, and that way when things dip, hopefully you won't fall through the ice.
yeah, there's definitely power and value, especially in balancing out some of the dips and things like that. So agreed.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm mostly my main focus has always been like the control end of things. That's what I'm most passionate about, and I was wondering if you had like how much involvement do you have in like the control end of the kinetic installations that you guys do, like the media server portion.
The control side of it from a Tait standpoint is really Navigator. It's our Navigator automation system, which
It's your that's your own system, right? You guys built that from the ground up. That's what you use to control.
it's a proprietary system that we've continued to develop over time, um, and it replaces what would typically be like an industrial automation system. It was built from the ground up to break through the silos of the typical industrial automation, where they don't talk to each other, they don't talk to really anything else, and they're very like rigid, which doesn't really work for entertainment or live event.
Not for modern show control. Everything's got to talk to everything.
Right. So I mean that's the foundation of Navigator, and so there's great power in being able to program a lot of the kinetic work that we do, because we can be creative about how we approach that. By pixel mapping something and using black white values as a translation for position, and like that's
Sure.
something that isn't really new, and there's other people doing it as well. But the ability for our system to um, be a supervisory system where it can sit there and be sort of the adult in the room that's directing traffic between all these other disparate systems, or It can be the system that is physically controlling the winch and monitoring, the speed and the position and queuing, telling things, where they need to be when, and syncing with time code, and outputting position data to feed to a media server to do real-time content masking or manipulation. So that part of it's, I know enough about to be dangerous, in how we can leverage it to make the kinetic work really pop. But
Well,
I
just
don't
from a
have.
high level even, I've always been such a sucker for visualizing math, right? And it's like when you're running generative algorithms through like an array of LEDs, right? Or a screen or whatever, you're visualizing math. You're coming up with interesting, beautiful math. And when you're talking about a kinetic installation, right? That's an entire dimension of visualization that you can play with, right? It's like not only can you play with, especially illuminated kinetic fixtures, like the white void guys, right? I think that and you guys also have done amazing examples of this, where you have an array of luminaires, right, which you can control the color and intensity of, and then you can control their position in space, and it's just like,
Yeah,
holy shit,
yeah,
mind blowing.
absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it goes back to some of the things that have been done for a long time now in parametric design, like algorithmic design and
Use
architecture and
Rhino and
things.
Grasshopper.
We do, and
Yeah,
but we don't. I mean, in a lot of the work that we do, we don't get to leverage it too much. But there's tremendous power in that, in generating, as you said, kind of translating math into a form or a visualization or whatever. And I think there's a tremendous power in being able to do that.
I think beauty fundamentally comes down to math. I mean, maybe that's too analytic, but like, I don't know, man. I think that most beautiful things can be expressed as beautiful math.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. I haven't really thought about it that way, but there's probably something to that for sure. Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
Well,
whether
symmetry, it's nature, it's like it's fractals.
right, whether it be pitch or just form or array or whatever it might be. Yeah, it's certainly something like when you see something that has been generated through an algorithm, it does tend to be compelling, for sure.
Yeah, man. Absolutely. Um, how are we doing on time? Are you feeling all right?
Yeah, I'm okay to continue for a little bit.
Cool. Yeah, I really wish that that this thing at LDI had come together. Hopefully we can get it together next year. But just I really like this style of conversation. I think it has a lot of value, because a lot of things come up in conversations like this that are inspiring, and like that make other, when I hear conversations like this between people who are in my field, I have ideas that I never would have. I think that
Sure.
having like venues for just chill discussion, it's super important.
Yeah, I think you pick up a lot, and some of the anecdotes too can excite people
Yeah.
that maybe aren't even aware of what exists out there. I mean, I got lucky and sort of stumbled into this industry, or I don't even know what I would be doing right now if it wasn't for that. But
How did
um,
that happen? How did you end up at Tait? Well, I guess, I mean, you were in the same spot, right? Tait is in Pennsylvania, right?
yep, yeah, it's just
Yeah.
what's global headquarters is here in Lidditz, Pennsylvania.
Did they like snipe you out of school, or did you find them?
Uh, it's a funny story actually. So I did grow up in the area around Tate, but really the community itself didn't know much of anything about what Tate did until I don't know, probably 6 or 7 years ago. We actually made our first website, and we didn't do any marketing before because it was not necessary. And frankly, we liked that it was like this sort of secret black ops operation, and there was like all this cool stuff happening, but nobody knew about it. So um, I grew up in the area, didn't really know anything about Tait, knew they were involved in, rock and roll, whatever that meant when you were like 17 or 18. Um, Moved to New York City, went to school for architecture. I was back maybe spring break of my final year of school. Um, my now wife, who I had just started dating at the time, was talking to me about her work that she had been doing um, at Atomic Design, which, if you're not familiar with Lidditz, Pennsylvania, it's sort of the epicenter of live event. There's probably 35 live event companies here. We have Rock Lidditz Studios, which is a full production rehearsal facility capable of loading a stadium or an arena show fully indoors. And so that all has just more recently come about. But um, uh, she had been kind of explaining to me what she was doing, and I didn't really want to be an architect. I sort of knew that about halfway through school.
Man, the best architects I know are not architects or they don't work for architectural firms.
Yeah, but I loved like the creative process. I love that going from really what I'm doing today, like -30 to 0, of like, hey, here's kind of the problem. Let's come up with a solution and or a design, and be able to stand up and defend it in front of a group of peers or critics, and in some cases get your shit torn apart. And that's really powerful to have that done. Thickens your skin and set me up really well for Tait. But anyway, I had been back on spring break, and ironically, Winky, who's one of the partners of Tait, happened to
and
shovel.
That's a great name.
Yeah, right. I happened to shovel his driveway as a kid. I was very entrepreneurial, and I knew him and knew he was somehow tied in. I thought what my girlfriend at the time had been telling me that she had done previously at Atomic was really interesting. Thought it might be a good alternative to going working for an architecture firm in New York or somewhere. So contacted Winky and said, hey, can I get maybe put in a good word for me over at Atomic? I want to apply over there.
How did you know him? Did you know him beforehand, or?
Well, yeah, no. So I used to shovel his driveway as a kid. Like he used to live like behind my parents' property in a development. And, like I said, I was very entrepreneurial. I used to do all kinds of stuff like mowing grass and detailing cars and shoveling snow and whatever I could do to make a buck. Right.
Yeah.
So I knew him from that, and he didn't, he knew me obviously, but didn't really know. I hadn't kept in touch with him. And he was like, well, what are you going to school for? And I was like, architecture, design. Oh, well, you need to come talk to my partner, Adam. He's like, don't bother with Atomic. Like, you need to come talk to Adam Davis. I said, okay. And so I called up Adam Davis. He was a partner at Tait. And, at the time he was really in charge of design and project management and just, producing. And so I called him up, and he was like, well, when can you be here? And I said, I don't know. Like, I'm hanging out here. I'm home on break. Like, I can be there in half an hour. And he was like, yeah, come on up. And so I showed up. He asked me a whole bunch of questions about, like, what did I like to do in my free time? And what's the coolest thing I ever built for somebody else? And, like stuff like that.
These things are important, man. If you're going to work with somebody, you have to want to be around them. They have to be cool people.
Yeah. But he never didn't once ask me for a resume or a portfolio. He didn't want to really see or know anything other than just ask me these questions.
Nah, dude, are you a cool person? I've never been asked for my resume or asked for my degree or anything.
And so, yeah, he set me up on a tour. I took at that point in time, it was like a 10-minute tour. Now it's like a 45-minute tour. But I came back. He asked me a couple more questions. And then he looked at me and was like, so when can you start and how much do you want to make? And I was like, I just came here to, like, in my mind, I'm thinking, I just came here to like check this out. Like, I don't know that I'm ready to like take the plunge and like commit to something. Um, but I sort of thought about it for a second, and then I started thinking, what would an architect make out of school? I sort of threw a number out there, and he could tell he like thought about it for a second. He stuck his hand out, and he was like, "Deal." And then of course
Wow.
he tried to convince me not to finish my architecture program, which I was 2 months away from after 5 years of schooling. Um, so I was like, "No, I'm finishing school. Oh, and by the way, I'm taking a month off after, and I'll see you in June." And he was like, "All right, fine." Um, and so yeah, I mean, the rest is history. Like, I've been really lucky. I got in when the company was, 50 full-time employees, and here we are in 2019 at the end of the year, and we're 1,000 worldwide. So,
Holy shit! You guys have 1,000 people working for
yep,
you guys.
yep,
Wow.
full-time. So it's crazy, and we're
Where do you have offices? You guys are all over the place, huh?
all over. Liditz's global headquarters. We probably have 500,000 square feet here. There's another probably close to 400 people in the UK, across a couple of different offices in Wembley and Haverhill and Wakefield, and then
I
there's
hope you got stock. Hope you
yeah,
got stock when you joined.
yeah, there's Middle East. We have a whole Southeast Asia division as well. We do a lot of work over there in theme parks and things.
Yeah.
Um, and so yeah, we're and then we have an office in Vegas as well that Gemma works out of, and she's a VP of sales for permanent installation, and in particular we have an office there to support all the shows on the strip. I think we've got show control and mechanics in every single one of them, maybe with the exception of one at the moment. So we have an office there to just support that because there's such a high density of automation equipment operating on the strip every night.
I mean, Vegas is definitely the place as far as show production goes, permanent show production especially. It's some of my favorite examples of kinetic art are Cirque du Soleil. Yeah, I love those shows. I really do. I think they're some of the most amazing examples of dynamic stages in the world.
Yep. Yeah, they do some pretty incredible work and creative work. I think the
Are you
statistic
involved with
is,
any of those shows?
me personally, I'm not. That's really more kind of Gemma's world and the PI team's world. I think the statistic is we have like over 1,000 axes of motion running on the strip on any given night. Um, so it's a pretty staggering number when you think about it in terms of all the stuff that can go wrong. Um,
Yeah. Well, it's such a cool niche. You know, you've taken motion control and made it your own, and also made it cool, and like it's sexy. It's beautiful.
yeah, and hopefully flexible and repeatable, and something that can help other creative people envision and create something. In a way,
It doesn't kill anybody. That's all secondary.
yeah. But we look at what we do as providing a toolkit in a way, for lighting designers to program lights and motion and content and all that stuff to work together. We have to be
Yeah.
flexible to make that all happen.
Do you get to travel to the different installations? Do you get to travel period for work? Is that like a big part of what you do, or are you pretty much in Pennsylvania?
No, I personally travel. I travel quite a bit, more so because I tend to be more client facing on the creative side, doing a lot of the kind of sitting with clients and other creatives and napkin sketching and blue sky conversations of what we could do and trying to inspire people. And so I do a lot of traveling to do those kinds of projects, or at least that kind of work. Um,
Yeah.
and so yeah, I mean, Asia, the Americas, all that stuff. So it's pretty much anywhere the work is, I will go.
That's cool. My goal this year is to spend about 6 months out of the country. We're getting to a point now where there's enough people based here in the Bay Area to handle the production and the boots on the ground project management, and I can focus much more on sales and drumming up business. And I've been focusing a lot on Europe and Asia, and just making alliances, like making friends, making connections with other people in the industry. And it's fun, man. Travel is a huge part of my life.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I was always the travel was I should say in the beginning it's a perk, and then it becomes a curse, in a sense, especially when you have a 14-month-old and a wife who you're leaving behind and stuff. So it's
Right.
tough at times, but the good news is they're pretty understanding. For me, it's just like I want to be here to see all the cool stuff that my daughter does, and so
You said 14 months old?
yeah, like at a point where she's taking steps but isn't quite walking yet, and she's got to a point where she's her personality's coming through, and it's a lot of fun. I really look forward at the end of the day to coming home and playing with her and hanging out. And
That's awesome, man. It's the ultimate art project, right? It's
yeah,
like the 20-year long art project.
It is incredible how much they pick up. Like I didn't even think about it, but like the other night she was doing something funny where anytime she hears a noise that she doesn't recognize, she kind of does this like, what's that? Like, what's that noise? She makes this like, what's that? And
Right.
and so I started
They're
doing,
so transparent, right? Their faces, you're just like, oh, I know what you're thinking.
Yeah, I know. Like I don't, you almost like don't have to know. They don't have to be able to say it verbatim, but you get it. Anyway, so she does this, and like, like when somebody says like, "What's that?" and you kind of like, oh, like look around. All of a sudden, like the other day, I noticed that like she just started like whipping her head around, and then I put two and two together that like the other night she was doing like, "What's that?" to a couple of noises that she heard, and I was sort of like just goofing around, sort of like looking around, and like she totally picked it up from that. And this like one little thing that I did, and
Yeah, just soak it all up.
oh my god, it's like it's incredible. So you like all of a sudden it makes you think like I need to be like careful what I say, what I do.
Yeah,
She's just gonna
like you're gonna be an influence one way or
oh my
the other,
god,
right?
it's incredible. Yeah, I know just how much influence you do have.
Yeah,
I mean, to some
absolutely.
degree, they're going to be their own person and they're wired a certain way and whatnot. But like, you do at this age have control over some of their behaviors and their actions and the little
That's
quirks of like what
that's a
you see come
responsibility.
out. So yeah,
Yeah,
it's a
man.
lot of fun.
That's really cool. Well, congratulations on that. I am not a parent, but maybe someday I will be. My brother just had a baby, my niece, and she's such a trip. But it makes you like grateful, or it makes you very aware of how your own parents affected your life growing up, right? It's like now as like a 30-something-year-old adult, I can look back at like my teenage years and be like, wow, I was lucky to not have parents that completely
Yeah,
fucked me
it's
up.
really interesting, like that you say that because I had a similar experience like the first couple of times that we like my parents would watch my daughter and when she was really little, um, and seeing like my dad, for example, like we'd go over to their house and she'd be asleep on him watching TV and just how he would like rub her like back and stuff. It's like weird. It's like almost like an out of body experience. Like I'm seeing that like her as me,
Yeah,
like
yeah. It's like,
because like
this is what it was like.
right, like I don't remember that. I can't like relive that, but like all of a sudden now with him and her, it's like I can almost like that's what it was like when I was like her age or size or whatever. And so it's just really interesting. It's like it does make you gives you a different perspective on parents and the job they did and all that. So it definitely opens your eyes to a lot of things you maybe otherwise hadn't thought about, or wouldn't have thought about had you not been a parent yourself now.
It's hilarious watching my parents with my niece, and I'm like looking at my parents and be like, oh my God, my parents are old. My parents are grandparents now. And they
Yeah.
like take on that, they definitely like take on the mannerisms. Like all of a sudden they look like grandparents. And it's like, I don't know exactly when that switch happened, but
But
now
the real question is though, like, are they grandparents or are they just parents? Like, is that, like I said, like, were they like that when your niece was you, or
yeah,
like
maybe, I don't
like
know. Maybe it's
that's sort of
us
like,
that changed, right?
those are like the things that were like going through my head, of like, wow, all of a sudden now I feel like I'm seeing myself 34 years ago or whatever. And yeah, it's just kind of it's a different, like I said, different perspective for sure.
Do you get to hang out with your parents pretty frequently? They must be pretty close, yeah?
Yeah, they live about 25 minutes from us.
Oh, damn. That's like right next door.
Yeah, relatively speaking.
My parents are literally on the other side of the country, but they still make it out. Like they come out pretty frequently, especially now that my niece is happening.
Yeah, yeah, I'm sure that's going to get people on a plane pretty often, I would imagine.
Yeah,
I
man,
mean, I
you
do.
gotta keep up because those, they grow up so fast.
Yeah,
It's a thing.
yeah. But I mean, I spent a lot of time with my dad on the racing side of things, and my mom watches my daughter once a week. So sometimes I pick her up, and we'll do dinner and things like that sometimes. So yeah, we're pretty close. We see each other relatively frequently, I would say.
That's awesome, man. That's really cool. I think it's important to have um to be tight with your parents to some degree, if possible. I know it's not possible for everybody, but that's something that I definitely value in my life, is like still being able to like be friends with my parents even, like I can talk to my parents about pretty much whatever, and they're,
Yeah,
I don't feel like a lot of people I feel like have kind of judgy parents, which I think that's part of what can fuck somebody up growing up, is having like really judgmental parents. I think that like if I have kids, I'm going to try and keep that in mind, as they grow up. It's just like, whatever. Because I was, when I got out of college, I had no idea what I was doing. I was like, I'm going to be a VJ when I grow up. And my parents were like, yeah, sure. But, it brought me here. So it's good.
well, yeah. I mean, I think one of the biggest mistakes parents make today is they try to be friends with their kids too early, when they still have to be their parents, and
Right. Well, kids need structure too, right?
makes doing that parent job really difficult. And so, yeah, that's where, like, my parents they were parents. I mean, when I was growing up, I had a
Yeah, they still
really,
stuck you behind the wheel of a car and taught you to drive at 6. That's pretty cool.
yeah, absolutely. But like at the same time,
They made you wear your
yeah,
seatbelt.
well, or just make sure that, like, I had to get a job and do all that
Yeah.
stuff. Like,
Yeah.
I had a good upbringing, but at the same time, I was taught the value of money and what it meant to do hard work and all of that. So that
That's
instilled,
super
I think,
important.
really good values in me, and hopefully something I can pass on.
Yeah, no, you sound like you got your head firmly screwed on, man. I'm sure that your daughter is going to be super cool.
It's like a whole different pressure, right? It's like,
Just keep her away from concert touring.
yeah, right.
No, it's funny, man. It's you look at kids who grew up in super conservative families, and they're just like the most, like they're some of the most like creative, wild people. And then you look at, especially out here on the West Coast, it's like I have friends who like grew up with like the most hippie parents, and they're goddamn lawyers now.
Yeah, yeah, like totally flipped 180.
Oh, absolutely. It's a seesaw thing. It's a pendulum. But, that being said, I think that like principles, right? Your principles and your fundamental values, that's something that gets set at a very early age, and it is 100% an observational thing. Like I inadvertently became kind of a mirror image of my parents as far as my values are concerned, even though I grew up being like, God damn it, I will never be like these people. But it's like now I'm all grown up, I'm like, kind of like those people.
Right. Yeah. It's you don't appreciate it sometimes till you see it through a different lens, or you're removed from it, or whatever. So
Yeah, well, I'm seeing his lens shift, right? To be kind of what you're describing, where it's like my brother's relationship with my parents has changed dramatically in the year and a half since he's had his little baby, because all of a sudden he's like, oh shit, this is what parenthood is. I get it.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it puts it into perspective, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, it's definitely talk about being thrown into the fire. Nobody can prepare you for that first week.
Oh my God,
at
man.
home.
Yeah.
It's like, what did I do?
Right. See, that first week is probably what's kept me from having a child. Because I've seen that first week on a number of people. Like I've seen that shit. It's just like, man,
It's like
that's
anything
intense.
else, man. It's like anything else. You get used to it. It's like, okay, it's like it's more of a shock than it is really that bad. It's once you kind of get over that shock, it's like, okay, like I can do this. And it only gets better from there, to be honest. So
It's like the ice bucket challenge.
yeah, right. I think the anticipation is worse than the actual thing. So
Sure, I can imagine, man. Oh, dude, I'm glad we did this. I wish we got to chill LDI this year, but I'm sure that we'll get to chill eventually. Next time I'm in New York, I'm totally going to come down, and I'm going to make a point to come out and see you guys.
yeah, absolutely. Reach out for sure, and I'd be happy to host you in Riddits and show you what we're up to.
That's cool, man. And on the flip side, if you're ever in the Bay Area or even in California, just let me know, and I'll try and make it out. We can get a drink.
Okay, sure thing. Have a couple trips coming up next year. Might be in the Bay Area. We'll see. I'll let you know.
Yeah, just keep me posted, dude. Well, should we wrap it?
Yeah, sounds good.
All right, brother.
Thanks.
Thanks again for doing this. I'll let you know when it's live, and I'll shoot you an email. I'm going to need like an image or something to,
Okay.